Let's talk about change. And I'm not talking today about the change that is done unto you. So life deals you a card that you didn't see coming and you have to respond to it. I'm not talking about that kind of change. Today I want to talk specifically about change that we want. When you desire to make a change in your life, you want to do something differently than normal. Which stages do you go through? It's super interesting, and I'll also tell you something about how I lost some weight. I used to be double this size. For the people who don't know me, this is a picture. One of the phases in the model is super interesting, and I spent extra time when I was preparing to, cut my body weight in half. I spent some extra time on that phase, preparing myself mentally and emotionally to go through that stage. All right, but before we talk about that, let's talk about the model itself. As with most models, there's two axes. Horizontally, we've got time, and vertically, we've got your emotional state. And there's a little divide here, and above here we're optimistic, and below we're pessimistic. Now, whenever we start with something new, we want to lose some weight. We want to, be more productive. We want to spend more time with our children. We have something that we want to change. Whenever we have that, we see great benefits. We see, wow, this is the reason why I would want to do it. If I only, accomplish this, my life will be more fun. It will be more easy. We see heaps of benefits. So when we start, we are always super optimistic. And what we call that is, uninformed optimistic. That's always the easy part of, starting anything. We buy the products, we get ready, we talk to our friends and tell them we're gonna do it, woohoo! And we feel like it. And then we get started. And the next phase is immediately in pessimism. Because now we're doing it for a couple of days, or maybe even for the second day. And we think, this is taking a lot of time, this is taking a lot of effort, and we start to lose a little bit of sight of the desired outcome that we had. So this phase we call informed pessimism. This is a difficult phase, and some people already quit by now. But it gets worse, and now we go to the phase where most people quit. And that's called the valley of despair. Now we hit rock bottom. Life isn't fun anymore. We hate it. We start to either in our own brain give up, or we start to publicly say, I can't do this, can't be bothered, don't like it, don't want it, and we stop altogether. So this is usually the period that, distinguishes the quitters from the gainers, the winners. So most people here quit, and they stop and they decide it was a bad idea after all. Usually we find somebody to blame as well, or the product itself that we were using, or the idea, or our own brain, or our own selves, and we start to lose a little bit of confidence. So we quit in the valley of despair. Now, while most change stops over here, sometimes we do go on, and then we get to this little place, which is a fun place because we're back in optimism, but now we're informed optimists. And this is where we go, okay, that was hard. I've gotten through the worst of it. I now know what I can expect. I'm prepared for worse times, but I've gotten through the hardest part. I can now see my benefits again. I can still go for it, and I'm optimistic about it. And then the final phase, once you get here, you're almost at the final phase, is you go for fulfillment. I think that's actually with one L here, right? Well, English is not my native language, but if you want to scratch one L, do it. The research for this was done by two psychologists, Don Kelly and Daryl Connor. And it's also been adapted in a nice little book that's called The 12-Week Year. And it's also been used in the book by Brian Moran, The 12-Week Year. if you want to know more details. Now, with most people, when they are trying to accomplish change in their life, they go through this cycle, and maybe you recognize this. You start up super optimistically, you go for it, then you become in the uninformed or in the informed pessimism. You go towards the valley of despair and you decide here, no, not for me, I'm going to quit. So you go all the way back and you find something new to change. And you try that new change, and in the valley of despair, you go back again and you get this whole cycle going of things where you lose confidence in changing. I had the same thing. I had been overweight for years. I would lose 20 kilos, would gain 30, and I've been fat my whole entire adult life. So one of the things I did, next to reaching out for help finally, was studying which thoughts and which emotions do I encounter in the valley of despair. And that was super interesting for me, because once I was dieting and it was going okay, I knew that once I stopped the diet, I would gain the weight again. So I really zoomed in on that valley of despair, and I decided, with help from others, that I needed to change that. I couldn't go on a diet anymore. Because once I would stop the diet, I would go from fulfillment to being completely unfulfilled again, because the valley of despair would come back. And that's how I, through managing myself in the valley of despair, got to this whole new body. Well, half of my body, basically. So what are the tips for you? Just know that you go through these stages. That's super important to know. Know that when you are in that uninformed optimism, you need to write down your goals. You need to write down the benefits. You need to make sure that those benefits are so super important for you that you are willing to go through the valley of despair. Because we all know it's super hard down there. All right, good luck with all the changes you want to accomplish, and keep on learning.